Okay, tell me about you being in jail.
Oh, what about it? What about it? Have we not heard the story? I was a heroin addict, and I ran, it's a long story, But, I don't know, usually a person of my background doesn't get that kind of experience. And that's really what it was worth, because, it shows me about, what are the things that are really wrong, and who's in jail? Poor people. Who's in jail? Stupid people. Not educated people from what I think you generally not middle class or upper class or anybody else, but poor motherfucking stupid people. And there's something really wrong with that. And it's terrible hypocrisy. You're going to be talking about the drugs thing again, which is like one of the worst hypocrisies, that I can imagine. And we can't, that's not even, almost something that's not even worth talking about, because the framework doesn't exist within it to discuss it intelligently or even, realistically, the biases and stuff are too deep. But it is a real problem, and sometimes, I hate to say it, but you get what you deserve, I've had to take that. Society has to take it. Everybody has to take it, Sometimes, you live with the problems you create. If you like living with problems, that's good. Obviously, I live in a society that really likes living with problems that function for them. I don't know. I don't really have much to say about that whole situation anymore. It's sort of like something that I would give up on. I'm a crank and I'm a voice in the wilderness kind of thing. And it's depressing. There are some things you just get to a point with where you just realize there are too many fucking retards and trying to help anybody or change anybody's mind or treat them to understand that they don't really understand. People don't like to hear that kind of stuff, and they don't like to be challenged. The stupider you are, the less likely you are to want to meet the challenge. And I don't know. I don't know. It's one of those things, just challenging. Just challenging people is it's not always a worthwhile venture. What would you do? Gotta keep my eyes on you. Watch what you say. Watch what you do. Watch what you do. Gotta keep my eyes on you. Watch what you say. Watch what you do. Oh, Carol, don't let them steal your heart away. 'Cause I'm gonna learn to dance if it takes me all night and day. Get into my machine so we can groove on out. I know a shaky little joint where we can jump and shout. It's not too far back off the highway, not too long a ride. Just leave your car out in the open, you just walk inside. A little cutie takes your hat and you just take her man. 'Cause every time you make a scene, you know the joint is jammed.
Quick story about when you were in jail and he was on TV, you were watching him on TV.
Oh, geez, yeah, I'm there at Millhaven, and we have little black and white TVs at Millhaven, and cable TV, and I was sitting up there now at night watching the Carson Show, and the Carson Show in those days, and Alana Miles came on, and there's Kurt. He's on the Carson Show live. So I realized that in this moment, my best friend and ex-partner are, you know, I am in a penitentiary with a schizophrenic man on the bottom bunk, you know, waiting to go to Joyceville.
Yeah.
And you know, my friend's on the Carson show.
What I learned in jail was that there was a big con game going on between, you know, the picture we paint of things, how we look at drugs, and the only people left in jail anymore are people, everything is drugs. Even the murderers I know were there, drugs was involved in the murders. And it's a big con game because as I later got out and I went to a treatment conference with some doctors, I was a patient on a methadone program and I got to talk to some doctors. I saw them trying to figure out something that they could have figured out had they been able to be closer to the subjects, which was that...
These are methadone treatment doctors? These are doctors prescribing methadone?
Yeah, they had a thing called the MTN, and you know, there were some pharmacists and stuff like that who were involved in it as well. Anyway, this is the MTN meetings, and we went and they were looking, saying, okay, well, we've got needle exchange, and we've got, you know, the junkies out there, and they got their bottles of alcohol to clean their rigs with, and we're trying to promote harm reduction. This is the first steps in what they call harm reduction. Yet we're still getting the same numbers back on hepatitis and those kind of transmittable diseases. What's happening? Well, you know, junkies are still doing the things that junkies have done for years, which is when you get, every time you shoot up, you have to use a little filter and a spoon. You know, and that filter gets a little residual of of the drug left in it. This is what you're using to filter as you're drawing it back up into the syringe. So you get 5 or 6 of these little filters, and you can put some water in them and squeeze them out again and get another shot. And so people are doing each other's things. It's like, you know, it's like re-rolling your roaches again, or, you know, like a guy walking along the street picking up cigarette butts and re-rolling those into a cigarette. Same idea, you know, you get 5 or 6 of these filters and you recook them and you get a shot out of it. So they're still, you know, doing stuff that the doctors don't know about. You know, and I thought any junkie knows that story. Any junkie knows that happens. But these doctors are sort of patting themselves on the back because they're just figuring it out. You know, a story which they could have, if they'd been allowed to look closer at these people, they would have found it out the first day, you know?
You've got the opportunity to actually contribute to rehabilitation clinics, and have you kind of decided not to have any part of that?
Well, you know, no, that's a constant struggle. It's not having any part of it. It's just, you know, if you got something to say and people don't listen to you, you get kind of sick and you want to go home.
You kind of get sick and you want to go home?
Yeah. I mean, you know, and there are really essential things that I disagree with, you know, like I think the interests that I guess it's our society or segments of our society show in things and how quickly they go to something like urine testing or testing this and wondering what's going on inside of a person's. But I think essentially no matter what your intention is and no matter how good your intentions, the fact is it's, you know, there's a question of personal liberty and benefit of doubt and all these kind of things there. So we just can't, I've never seen that as a righteous thing. And there's, I think if a doctor has to answer to a policeman on a subject matter that a doctor's going to know more about, I think there's a problem. So, yeah, I've probably been, it's easy to say, to stomp your feet and go home because you think no one really is going to listen to you or they're going to look at you like you're a crank or a quack or something. But that's what I do still, and I guess I'm sort of struggling with that. But it's not when they say an opportunity, believe me, opportunities are always compromised, you know. And the point here is that everything is compromised. That's what I can't stand. Everything inside it is a compromise. You have you have a compromised medical profession, a compromised law enforcement by supplying them with such an obvious opportunity for corruption, and you have a society where you are willing to compromise principles that are really, you know, the threshold of tolerance is very low. They're willing to compromise their essential freedoms, or the idea of those freedoms, very, you know, too quickly. They're willing to give those up too quickly and too easily in the name of something else. It's I guess every society needs its scapegoats, you know. You know, this society has the criminality that happens in and around drugs. So, yeah, I have to struggle with that one a bit more, about how I can contribute to that one without without hitting somebody over the head with a 2x4.
And one thing we never talked about, methadone.
What about it?
Well, how do you feel about it? Is this something that you're kind of obliged to take, right?
Well, you know, I don't think it's really, no, I don't think you should really ask me about that, because the truth is not, you know, necessarily, the truth is sometimes can be pretty mundane there, Adam.
Oh, you don't think I should ask you about that?
No, not really. I would rather you didn't. I don't think it's important. If you want to ask me about it, methadone, I almost don't really feel like saying too much,
yeah.
At the risk of being like didactic, you know, or making people think about, you know, saying something here that somebody else maybe watching this might think, oh, he's fucking, you know, trying to tell me something, or I can't understand his point of view and I don't really give a shit, or, you know, he's just a fucking whiner.
Right.
You know, anything like that. I don't really fucking give a you know, care to set myself up for that. You know, I will say that, you know, the general way you attract, you know, people attack our society deals with the whole drug issue is a sham and a lie.
Right.
And when you go around, doesn't matter what people do, good, bad, or indifferent. People will do things, and you have to accept it. You know, it's just logical thing. People do things to themselves, or they want to be some certain way. People are certain ways. People behave certain ways when put in certain situations. And to, at some point, not acknowledge, good, bad, or indifferent, that people do these things and want to do these things, good, bad, or indifferent, is not good management of the situation. By saying, you know, by understanding that there are people who will do drugs like heroin and want to do drugs like cocaine, or cigarettes or alcohol. But in the case of the two aforementioned drugs, the idea that you would want to say, well, we would rather that's a problem that nobody deals with.
Right.
That we would rather say that doesn't exist within our social structure. We would say that you know, that at worst, you know, I'm sorry, at best rather, is idealism. It's idealism to believe that we don't want something. We reject it to the point where it does not have a context in our society, and to go outside of that boundaries, you are contravening the law. Is not a good strategy for dealing with something that, whether you like it or not, some people are going to do.
Right.
You know, and we judge it in really, we judge the whole thing in very, it makes people judge the things in very peculiar ways, like, you know, I heard somebody, one of the addictions people from the States talking on the television, and they said, you know, a smoker, for example, who battles with smoking for 5 years and quits 20 times, and finally
gets himself off cigarettes in a really more serious way on his 20th attempt is, you know, considered a really, you know, that's considered a success. Oh yeah, you know, look at how hard it was, but yeah, you know, you did it. Whereas a person is expected to get off drugs the first time.
Right.
The expectation is, you know, what the fuck is the matter with him, or what the fuck is the matter with you?
Do you believe, from your own personal experience, that there's any truth to the rumor that quitting cigarettes is harder than getting off heroin?
Well, I would imagine so. But
Yeah.
you know what? You can't fucking say that for every individual, and you can't say that for everybody.
So everybody's different with what drugs do to their bodies. With what drugs do to their bodies, drugs don't affect everyone in the same way?
Drugs don't affect anybody in the same way. No, I'm talking about your needs to do them. There's some people who find cigarettes much easier to give up than heroin, but not many probably. I don't know. But I'm not going to speak for anybody else.
Right. Well, the reason I bring up methadone is because, given our conversations about heroin, it seems that you can't really, or you shouldn't talk about heroin without mentioning methadone, because...
But you know what? You know, we're into stuff where I could get really personal and whiny. Like, I could get really whiny.
Right. Well, that's okay. I mean, these are things which are obviously very important to you, and that's why I want to get into them. But it's, you know, that's your prerogative, man, to actually give details or not and share your feelings about it.
Well, you know, like lots of people have different things. I've found some of the stiffest people on the drug questions to be drug addicts themselves, you know, sitting in fucking groups for a few years there. You know, like, you know, groups of people on methadone who are, you know, doing support groups and blah, 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 blah. I've called fucking other drug addicts Nazis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've called you, what are you, a fucking Nazi? For my own part, my own experience was that as a drug addict, finding myself in a really desperate state and acting upon my really desperate state, and then what I encountered in the system, the legal system, and the punitive, correction system. I just found it, sort of an indifference and a cruelty in the whole thing.
Or a lack of understanding too, maybe.
Maybe, but there's an actual out and out cruelty. You know, like I'm a bit of a wimp, and I don't treat too many people too badly. Although I can become pretty angry with people. I couldn't imagine taking a person who's really physically dependent on drugs. I cannot imagine just fucking removing them from a situation and not offering any kind of adequate treatment or anything for that situation on a chemical level. I mean, fuck what I'm supposed to do, or what, God I'm supposed to find, or what fucking 12 steps I'm supposed to find. A person whose fucking body's burning up is going to go crazy.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So I found it cruel, but again, I'm a whiner. I mean, most people really enjoy the idea of, being treated cruelly and, allowing people to treat them cruelly, and looking at things from moral perspectives where maybe that's not always the best idea.
So you don't find yourself justified in being a whiner, given how, well, if you'll forgive the term, you're a bit of a punk rocker. You've got a punk rocker attitude.
Truthfully, I don't know how I feel. I mean, I feel like, I feel like I'm, in a bigger picture. I feel like I'm just a person in another power game.
Yeah.
A person who's been, a person who, because of things that I've done and drugs that I've done and situations, not situation, but states of being that I've got myself into through that drug use. And the bigger picture, I'm just part of somebody else's propaganda. I'm just Yeah, part of somebody else's propaganda, another enemy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an enemy of the state that you live in. I'm an enemy of your, you know, I'm gonna get so whacked. I have to be stopped because I'm gonna get so whacked out on drugs that I'm gonna break into your house and kill you in the middle of the night.
Well, you did rob a bank, though.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Okay.
That's right. But I mean, they were, you know.
This is all what you're saying.
My robberies were fucking really sad, inept, wino, sort of that, you know, they were actions that could only be inspired by a tremendous fear, like the fear of waking up in the morning, which I don't think you would understand what it's like to go to bed and fear waking up the next morning, because there's not going to be any drugs there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I could tell you what that's like.
So does it make it hard for you to talk about drugs because of how personal they are to somebody like me who has no experience of them? Right?
Well, it is, because you're not you in our society are genuinely not taught to regard the situation in anything but the most prejudiced,
mm-hmm.
and the biases which you have grown up with since you were a child, you are going to have a hard time breaking. What I'm asking you to accept is well beyond the scope of anything our society has supplied you with, either in terms of information or attitude.
Right.
So I don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. You know, I would love to talk about it, but I don't like talking about it, because, you know, it leaves people who are less intelligent and know less than I am in the context of the social things to attack me for my opinions, because
without any common ground.
Without any common ground. There was that guy, and I forget his name, Bruce somebody or other. I think his name. But he's he was a professor. I read the book about. I read it in jail. Actually, it was given to me by the woman I worked for doing tutoring at the school in Joyceville, mm-hmm. and she and it was written by a professor at Simon Fraser University, who put forth the proposition that we don't even have any adequate social framing to begin to approach the drug question. Right. And we have to frame the whole framework of how we look at it completely differently if we're ever going to solve it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he's right. He's right, because I'm talking to you, who's probably socially and politically, as far as you go, you're probably very liberal. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey man.
Yeah, right. Hey man.
You're probably a very liberal. You probably support all kinds of good and decent, really truly decent viewpoints in, you know, in your politics and your cultural views. But I still know, sitting here talking to you now, that you have all kinds of prejudices that you probably can't, and biases that come from our culture that you probably can't get over and would roll over in your mind. So, I'm hesitant to want to talk about these things, but, you know, what else is there to talk about?
Well, since we're talking about personal things, your necklace. It's kind of
You don't talk about that. There's no point. When I got a necklace, I wear a fucking necklace to remind me to, once in a while, give an extra $1 to the people on the street, you know, who are stemming. Mm-hmm. Give $1 once in a while to the stemmers. Give $1 to the really ugliest stemmer you can find. How you doing? Evan.
Evan the drummer. How's your drumming, bud? All right.
Oh, so what's that? We've been interrupted here.
No, that's fine. That's terrific. Blair, tons of stuff there.
Well, I'm probably hardly being a good guy for my.
Well, you're being yourself,
for
man.
For my career here. I'm probably not doing much for my career, as it's occurring to me as I'm sitting here talking to you. Probably not much of what I've said in this said on camera here has done much for my career or that kind of bullshit.
Well, speaking about the future of your band and the Mojos and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Well, there's enough bullshit in the music industry that
you're gonna have to deal with anyway, and you're tough enough to deal with.
Am I tough?
Yes.
I'm not tough.
Yeah, you are.
This is what strikes me as really crazy about it, was that you saw this with alcohol. When they said alcohol is no longer a part of society, you're no longer applying any, even intelligent or at least dealing with rules on this thing. That is to say, when it appears, there are no more conventions. And, a kid's money is just as good as an adult's money. It doesn't differentiate between children and adults, it's not even trying. That's the thing that they found, that's the thing that strikes me. And that, to protect your children, even at very worst, to protect your children, wouldn't it be better that you made a stupid choice, even assuming that it's as a value judgment, it's a stupid choice? Wouldn't it be better to make that stupid choice as safe as possible for them? And at least you would end up with doctors who understand what it is, all the doctors from the people who've got to hand out the methadone and the whatever, and whatever else, and give health care to these people.
Can I ask you something, though, Blair?
Yeah.
How can you expect doctors
psychiatrists?
Well, how can you expect doctors to treat junkies when they have no experience with the drug at first hand?
Well, you can. It's really long. I mean, that's one of the things too. As long as it's not, as long as it's illegal and that is dealt with by the police rather than by health agencies, all you're doing is compromising the ability of those health agencies to do their job. My doctor knew nothing about heroin. I went as a member of a patient's advocacy committee in 1994, I guess it was, to one of the meetings of the Methadone Treatment Network of Ontario, which, by the way, is almost all exclusively, with the exception of, like a pharmacist here and there, Jewish doctors, and a lot of them are Orthodox Jews.
So what?
That's one thing that really struck me.
Well, that doesn't matter.
No, yes, it does matter. It does matter very much because, I went in and talked to Shapiro once himself, who was the big doctor who got the whole thing started, and he said that it was a part of his belief politically to do this. He couldn't do otherwise, and it was part of his religious conviction. And I was fucking always impressed with that. I was always impressed that these guys who would do a job that nobody else wants to do were Jewish guys. And guys, and good doctors. Yet, they would do it out of duty. And that's what I mean, like Orthodox Jews. And
Okay.
I was always impressed with that. Sorry,
I thought you were slagging Jews for a sec.
Why would you assume that?
It's just my, no, just that.
No, because it's a hard job to do being a methadone doctor, because nobody thanks you for it and you have the police looking at your fucking files. What kind of effective job can you do? And so I don't know, I kind of had a nervous breakdown and got into drugs at that point.
In 85 or 80?
86, I was working back in the t-shirts. Not much, 86 I worked at t-shirts.
And you were into
87 I
drugs?
went to Montreal, yeah, to meet, what? I was what?
You were into drugs at this point?
Well, I did a lot of Valium.
Yeah. Is that how you first got into harder stuff?
Well, I guess so. It was really funny, I drank a lot in the early 80s, like, as your beer, and we always used to do, like, kind of amphetamines, all these, because every little fucking teenage girl we used to know was on, had diet, had amphetamines for dieting, right? So it's like, hey, sweetie, what you got in your purse, kind of thing. A lot of, and, we would buy, I remember we made a big investment in a bunch of speed once, in capsule form. And anyway, yeah, I started
I took Valium once and it just blew my head. Didn't want to really drink anymore. And I became sort of a Valium and coffee guy. And I smoke a lot of weed and 50 milligrams of Valium a day. I don't know if that's a lot to some people. It's a pretty fair amount of medication.
How long did that last?
Oh, a year, a couple years. About 87, I started to get into, I knew I was interested in doing heroin. This is about everybody I knew was interested in doing heroin. I guess the crowd I know about 87, I mean, everybody I know from then, with few exceptions, became heroin addicts. You know, from a scene, people in a scene. And that was really good because it got me writing, and I got the acoustic guitar, and I got to play an acoustic guitar, and I got into kind of a folky thing. I wrote some really hot...
It got you writing
some
music?
Material, yeah. It got me some writing some songs that were really... Because I had good material. I mean, you're doing something like heroin and think and... I broke up with a girlfriend as well. This is sort of 87, 88, 89. I'm really... By 89, I'm a heroin addict. I broke up with this girl, and then we get into heroin. I mean, you know, there's a lot of, you know, cool sort of stuff going on there. A lot of material, you know, and I was really enjoying the idea that I was being a heroin addict.
Yeah.
As anybody who's into sort of something like that, there's a sensational aspect to it. Certainly an aspect of sensationalism.
Yeah. How deep did you get into the drug?
Eventually very heavily over, you know, 3 years. And very heavily. It wasn't a long time, you know, just a few years, but I mean, very heavily. I hung out with a guy, and, you know, he was selling heroin, and we were selling heroin, and there was a lot of brown junk, and we used to smoke it on tinfoil. And I remember one day, and I don't know, it wasn't very late, could have maybe only, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon at the latest, and I realized that it wasn't even, you know, and I wasn't going to go to bed till 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd already done almost 2 grams of heroin that day. That's a lot, you know. Now, I had a cop sit across the desk from me once and say, oh, my Jones was nothing because he knew people who did 5 grams a day. But believe me, 2 grams a day is quite a fair amount of heroin, you know?
And so eventually you went to jail for what, for dealing?
No, we got arrested. Oh, man. I got arrested. We got arrested. A girl we knew was coming to us, and she bought a lot of heroin for her. Well, for a daily consumption, she bought maybe 5, 6 times, you know, her usual fix for the day, with the story that she's going away to visit her mother or her dad or somebody out of town, lives out of town. And anyway, so she was probably about, I don't know, somewhere between half a gram, 3/4 of a gram. And usually I guess a shot in a strong, you know, a shot is about half of a tenth, about a 20th of a gram, I guess, at this, you know, maybe if you're really, you know, you need maybe a whole tenth of a gram. That's a big shot, a tenth of a gram.
Tenth of a gram.
Yeah, that's a pretty big shot. Relatively speaking, you know. And people can get up to some pretty, but it's a lot, anyway. So she's got, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 tenths of a gram, something like that. And I think she split it with her boyfriend, and they're going to kill themselves. Now it's 3 tenths of a gram, whatever. You know, it's enough to kill this guy because he's not strung out, but it's not enough to kill her, and she just wakes up later with a fucking body. So of course somebody's dead, and homicides on it, and within a couple of days, we saw it on the news, we were watching it on the news, and within a couple of days they ended up at my brother's place where we were staying on Oh man, I always forget the name of the street. One block east of Sherburne.
Berkeley.
Berkeley. No, not Berkeley.
Seton.
No, the one next one over.
Ontario. Parliament.
No. One west.
Oh, west. Oh, Pembroke.
Pembroke Street. That's right. I always don't know why I always forget that. Pembroke.
The sphincter of the universe.
On Pembroke Street, and a homicide arrested us, and we went to the station. We said, yeah, they said they'd let us go if we made a statement, so we said, yeah, we sold them the drugs, and they let us go. The homicide cops don't fuck around, really. They don't got much interest in a couple of sick junkies on a...
Holy shit. So this guy died through...
Yeah, and then we got arrested for selling the drugs to the girl who... She ended up doing 2 years less a day. Anyway, that's when I got arrested the first time. Now, I think we only did about 10 days.
So what year was that?
That's 1991.
1991, yeah.
Late 1990. Anyway, no, I mean, we... yeah, we each only ended up doing about 10 days on that altogether, each. I know I ended up doing 10 in the dawn, and I think my friend Paul did 10 days on weekends, 4 weekends or something, 5 days on weekends. And...
But that wasn't for dealing.
That was, yeah, that's
it was for dealing, and that's all
dealing.
You got for dealing?
No, that was for, well, it's the homicide squad. They were in charge of us with fucking anything. They didn't want anything. You know, they had the statement. It was all their interest was to build up a case to answer for this guy's death. You know, had not much interest in us. We had been cooperative. Just couldn't really do anything else. You know, but no, it was, what do they call it? Possession of diacetylmorphine with the intent to traffic. Because, I mean, they came into the room and we had fucking, I don't know, probably the better part of a gram still there, and it was all just laid out on a mirror still. You know, cut into, you know, little tenths of a gram.
Yeah.
And, see what else. Anyway, no, I did some robberies later.
Did you?
I did some robberies later on, yeah. I got to a point, yeah, like you can't...
Were you still a junkie?
I got to go to jail. Yeah, I mean, what do you think I'm doing robberies for? You think I'm doing robberies because I needed money for anything? Like, no, I mean, I had to do this time. I was scared to death to do a few days in jail, because I'd never been in jail. And so I just figured, I'll go for broke like that, and I robbed a bank. I was so well, I needed...
You robbed a bank?
Yeah, I robbed 2 banks, actually.
You robbed 2 banks? On your own or with other people?
No, myself. Why would I do it with somebody else?
With somebody else?
No, why would I do it with somebody else? I do it myself.
So this is after you've been to jail or before you've been to jail?
No, I've never been to jail before.
You'd never been to jail, then you robbed a bank, then you got busted for the heroin charge.
Well, that was outstanding. I'd already been sentenced on that, but I hadn't shown up.
But you're still a junkie, of course.
Yeah, of course.
So then what happened? And then you got busted for that.
Well, I got busted trying to rob a Shoppers Drug Mart, which I found was not a good idea. I robbed the IDA over here. You want to go take a look?
Sure.
And she's still there. She's still the lady I robbed, working there every day. She's used to it. I've met some people in jail there. She gets robbed regularly. But, I mean, they're, you know, pretty wino robberies. The first one was the only really one that you might even call a success. I mean, how much you know, 3 years for $800 or something. So wino standard's not bad, $800. I mean, the second one, the second bank, the girl just flipped me $100 and I took off. So, I don't know. Well, that's the robberies. Anyway, I did time for that. And that's so funny because, you know...
How much time did you do for that?
I had 3 years.
3 years? Mm-hmm. Well, you were still a junkie, though, right? When you were still addicted to heroin when you went to jail?
No, physically not. When I came out of the Don jail, no.
Oh, really?
I kicked in the... Hey, I had to kick in the Don jail. I mean, I had no point, you know, I had no choice.
Yeah. They didn't give you any treatment or anything like that?
They let you sit up in the hospital for a couple of weeks or
a week. Or
Did they have methadone back then? Methadone back then?
No. They've had methadone. Methadone was invented in the Second World War as a...
Okay.
In the First World War, when the Germans had the war, they had the Turks as allies, and they had plenty of morphine. In the Second World War, the Turks were not allies, and they didn't have that, so they had to go to a synthetic form, which they named after Hitler, Dolafine. And that became methadone. That became the thing that was methadone was used in methadone treatment.
So when you got out of jail, that was
93.
93. Then what'd you do? You returned to music, right?
Well, no, I did a couple of gigs. Did some recordings that at the time didn't work out, although we're starting to work on them again now, 9 years later. And yeah, it just didn't work out, and I just, got back into drugs, but I had a year on parole.
You got back into what, heroin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I sit for 2 years thinking about nothing but shooting heroin, and it's not going to be long before I shoot heroin, especially if you put me in a room with a Vietnamese kid who can sell it to me. Understand? I mean, that's the thing about being in corrections institutions, is you meet nothing but people who can help you or are, they're involved in some way. I mean, I got to a halfway house here in Toronto where I have to stay, and instead of sending me home, they make me stay at a halfway house where the first thing that happens is a Vietnamese kid who I'm sharing a room with comes in and says, hey, do you need guns? Need American money? Do you need heroin?
Why is the drug issue still important for you?
Because it's an injustice, and it's stupidity, and it's weird, and it's still related to medieval kind of shit like witch hunts, and it's not a thing in a civilized. It's not a thing that prohibition is not a thing that a civilized society should be doing. It doesn't really make any sense. It causes a lot more problems than it protects people from fuck all, and you can't. I heard a guy, talking on an old TV program the other day, and you can't legislate morality. Whenever you start to legislate morality, you're into for real fucking problems. And I've lived through some of the problems of coming from, what I would call my culture, I guess, like rock and roll guy, grew up in the 60s, 70s, and the attention that was brought onto these, these drugs, during those times, from the fact that they were, are prohibited substances. You have a whole bunch of people going out and saying something like, they're questioning that. They're questioning whether that's a real and valid thing. And besides, you just know that, it didn't work with booze. It just made booze unhealthy. And when you don't have conventions surrounding these things, they're just, they're dangerous. They're dangerous to people's health, You could go brew up some whiskey and go blind. Like, basically, it's that simple. And it's just, and since I've done a lot of drugs, and I know what it's like to do drugs, and I know what it feels like to be a person who needs to do drugs. So of course it's an important issue, and it's just a weird injustice, because it's sort of like it's artificial. There's no reason for things to be as bad as they are, other than like something unpleasant like politics, which is, when an organizing principle is for people a lot of the time, especially when they think in groups, is find an enemy. And if you have an enemy, in our society, you can paint drug users and people who are having these kind of problems as the lowest of the low. And they're a danger to you and your community and whatever, and it's, it's a game, it's an enemy, it's a scapegoat, it's a,
And people who aren't going to tend to stick up for themselves, like, are, a group of people who are particularly, there isn't a culture. The culture is criminal culture. You gotta remember too, the other thing is when a person decides they might be curious about what a drug is like, they make a conscious decision that they might be curious about what doing a drug, would be like. They're not making just a free decision about themselves, a personal decision about themselves and a substance. They're making a decision to cross into, to say, okay, now I'm doing something that is criminal, which also opens your way for all kinds of other things. There's a lot of people who aren't predisposed to criminality who are predisposed to use drugs. But I don't even know what me sitting here talking about this right now really is. That's something, but you know what, I sort of gave up. We're years away from that one. We're years away from dealing with it. Right now it just seems like it's too entrenched and there's no basis to get out of it. There isn't any real basis happening as far as I'm aware of to really move forward on that question. And that question's going to be on, anybody who would understand the morality of dealing with the prohibition issue isn't going to deal with it because they can deal with so much else first, I guess. And it's too entrenched that people don't even have a basis to think about it. Given if you gave most people on the street the choice, they wouldn't, and they without really understanding, because how does most people know about something that they never see? Yeah, I don't know. That's just why that answers that question for you, and why that's important. And I don't know what my story. I don't know about my story about my my time in jail or my thing. I don't know how important, because it was only a couple of years, and that was 13, 14 years ago now. Yeah, it was 12 years ago I got out, so I mean it was 14 years ago that I was arrested. I committed the crimes. So, yeah. And there's a strange quality to, there's a strange quality to me, remember, because I really was, like on the street and pretty reduced to a pretty animalistic level. Again, I don't want to come on like I'm some kind of reformed guy either, because I've also in the end had a really sort of easy time. I haven't had a hard time. I got on methadone. And
You're still on methadone?
No.
You're not on methadone?
I've been on methadone for a long time. And
I thought you were on methadone.
No, I haven't been on methadone for about a year and a half.
Huh. What's it like getting that out of your system?
Well, it wasn't that weird, because I was on I went for like a long time on 1 milligram of methadone. Mm. So it really wasn't a big deal for me. I know, the stories from my friends and other people who I've known. I've had a rougher go. I had a pretty easy time with methadone. It didn't do anything really horrible to me, and it was just it was really just a benefit. But that's, oh shit, the whole thing is only about 4 years of my life.
Yeah. The good thing about focusing on robbery is that now because it's happened so much later.
Well, I don't really remember it. You know, that's the other thing, is I remember, like...
But you're not the same person, is what I'm saying.
Fancy things. No, well, I mean in a true Buddhist sense, who is from moment to moment.
Yeah, but I mean, you're either like a criminal who's breaking the law on a regular basis and then being incarcerated for it, or you're not, and you're not, clearly. But you're a changed person, and you've got this perspective now because you're older, and all this stuff happened a long time ago.
Okay, and my original point was, my opinions about what have to be done have never changed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not on junk. I haven't done junk in years. Years and years and years. And I don't miss it, and I could probably look at it now and not have a hard time with it. But I'm just lucky like that. Like, you know, I see people who, especially because I never grew up, so change isn't that hard for me. You know, and maybe there's something for the movie there.
You never grew up?
Yeah. No, I never grew up in a lot of ways, for sure. I never grew up.
What's so important about growing up?
It can be really important.
You don't have
You know,
a friend?
I don't know if I really want to go, I really want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, not growing up can be an advantage because you always know how to do things with like that's why you can change. I've noticed with a lot of my friends, they don't have the capacity for change that I do.
Did you ever make any money?
No. No, I've never made any money. Like, really. Got a bit of dough in the bank right now, but not a lot. Like money from what?
From what you do. From what you would want to do.
No.
Playing music?
No, no, playing music. The music thing is very hard, and I've had a very hard relationship with music. And I think probably the thing that's dearest to my heart and makes me the most upset at the same time, the old rock and roll music, and my whole career with that is, I'm thinking probably what happened is I'm probably one of those people who makes other people kind of feel like they're uncool, and I don't think people really like that. And especially in a place like this, where people probably obsess a little about cool, they really wouldn't like it. But no, I never made any money. I don't get grants either. That's another thing. I've been turned down for a lot of grants too over the years. You want to sit and bitch about that?
la 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 la. What do you want to know about drumming?
You know, anything. How you got into drumming? Because you used to be a singer.
No, I always wanted to play drums first. I played drums when I was a kid. I took drum lessons off Old Al Blue on the Queensway here when I first came to Canada years and years ago. You know, it probably is something like there's a simplicity about drumming that is really quite attractive, and I think that because it's something that it's based on feeling and hitting rhythmical sounds on a stretched head over a cylinder, which is the common thing in all drumming. And something about the simplicity of that I think probably appealed to me.
So what else did you get out of it in terms of getting out of prison, and then getting getting into drumming, which is what you did, right?
Well, it's got its good and bad things because it's a way for me to say, okay, I'm not going to deal with anything. The most cynical is I'm going to do something that doesn't really matter in terms of any kind of sociological thing. I'm not going to get into a political argument with anybody because most people aren't worth arguing with, and their political ideas are simple and not worth bothering. So I'll do something that is just not like that. Doesn't have that kind of controversy surrounding it. So we're not. I'm not going to bother with planning. Like my old man was a planner, and he probably realized when he realized the social impact of physical things that were going on in his business. I think it flipped him out a bit, and it's nice to be in a business where you're just dealing with things that are ideas that that don't have not important, that's not the right thing, but don't have certainly not negative social consequences. I can't think of any negative social consequences to playing any music of any sort, any time, And so I don't have to get into political arguments. I don't have to worry about what I believe not being popular or whatever, that kind of thing. And I like art. I like the pretending of art. I like to pretend. I like to play, so...
You ever see some play?
And I'm good at music. The other thing, somebody asked me why do I like music, so usually when I do music, I sort of get to be the boss because it's my sense of direction and focus. And in some ways that's as good a sort of answer as any. Pancho Quinto. Pancho Quinto is a connection to another thing, another era almost, if you will. I mean, he knew a lot of those guys. I mean, he knew Mongo Santa Maria, and he knew all those people from a time. I guess he's a bit younger.
He was your teacher, right?
He's a friend of Papa's. He came over and he showed us some stuff. I mean, he showed us some bata stuff, and he gave me some. He's always the encouragement I got from Pancho Quinto, the generosity of the encouragement, and the feeling that I got from him when we played together was that I was on the right track. With him, it was he showed me some bata stuff, and if and when I see him again, we'll continue along these lines. I mean, I hope I see him again. I would love to learn some more bata from him and that kind of thing, but it's more just the encouragements that I received from him. The encouragement and I could see it in his face. I could see it in his face, and such a character. He's still linked to another time, another way of playing the instrument that is funny because it's at once he's current because he's there, he's a living guy, he's not a museum piece, and but he is connected to what I think in his words, and I have heard him call it this, is the slave drumming. What was he called? No, the Tiempo de España. That was how he put it. The Spanish Times drumming, which is different than the innovations that you get with the tumbao kind of playing in the popular orchestras. He's a real Afro-Cuban.
When you played with Massey Hall, at Massey Hall, where they play, Buena Vista Social Club, where they're in town, opening for Cubanismo. Talk to me about that for a sec. How did it feel being on that stage and being a part of a big Cuban night in Toronto?
The sound was kind of crappy, but I mean when I walked out on stage and I said to the audience, "Welcome to another night of Cuban music here at Massey Hall," I think it had been a really exciting few years, and I really felt that moment.
During the world beat craze of the mid-90s, which I had this nice little career in doing Cuban music, you know, like this was a cool experience. Was coming down here, the stage door, and just sort of walking in because, you know, on nights when the Cuban groups were here, because these people like became my friends, and they
Stage door at Massey Hall.
Yeah, really accessible people. Hey, I walk through here and. Hey, Juan DeMarcos is looking for a bottle of rum, you know?
Clave Congo?
Well, truthfully, I don't really like to think about Clave Congo much, but...
Can you speak up?
Oh, I guess I could. Can I lean in? Can I lean in? You know, no, I guess I mean, Cubanismo wasn't the real experience. Cubanismo, that was cool, and it's a prestigious gig, and I had a happening band at the time. But really the cool thing that I remember was coming here for the Afro-Cuban All-Stars. And Papa came over to the studio and get me. And they had been in my studio the night before, sort of jamming away, three of them, the timbali player and the bass player. And who was the other guy? The violin. He played the violin. But I think he was something else too. He played the violin, one of the singers. And so anyway, we came down here, and that was kind of fun, because we just walked in the back door like we were, you know, part of the thing, and actually we were. You know, and I probably spoken into the camera here already about, you know, what a nice experience it was, just the generosity of the musical experience. It was just this was one of those times where you really realized how accessible it really was.
I mean, you didn't grow up being a Cuban musician, but you got so into it, and then you took your band to Massey Hall. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's all pretty good. No, that was a great experience, and it was, you know, successful. I had a good time over that 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. And Mojo's just opened up for the MC5 a couple months ago.
Yeah, that was kind of strange.
Yeah, but it's still to have happened.
It's pretty well. It's pretty cool. I mean, we're you know, that's kind of who else is going to open up for them, I guess. But then again, you know,
lots of people could have had that.
I guess
gig.
lots of people could have had that gig.
Sure.
But
you wouldn't have had that gig unless you worked at it for a couple of years.
But I just thought it was weird. I'm out of touch. I haven't. I'm really frozen in time. I'm really out of it. I don't think that the kind of music that the Radio Mojos play is happening anymore. I'm not sure if it ever was,
You really think that?
Yeah, people have never particularly liked rock and roll.
Oh, come on.
No, they haven't. They never have. I pointed it out to a friend of mine recently. Yes, we were listening to Dave Edmunds.
Who's that?
Who's that? Of course, no. Dave Edmunds.
Who is he?
Dave Edmunds.
Here in 1970. Those were the only two big buildings here, the two big black ones there, the TD Towers, I think, and the Royal York Hotel. And then I think the next thing that went in was the white one, Bank of Montreal building. I think that was the one that came behind it. And then this thing. And this thing we're standing in now, I think that's exactly an I don't think any of these other buildings went in before this. So now on the other side here, we're continuing the first robbery story. So I got outside the bank with about $900, and I got into a cab that happened to be passing, and we came straight along. Which one is it, Richmond or Adelaide that goes that way? I can't remember which one. But I ended up down there at the Sheraton Center, and I walked through the complex of the Sheraton Center. There's the Hilton down there, and I think the Sheraton Center, I think they're joined by a common concourse. And I walked through the concourse, came out on the other side, took the subway up to Wellesley where I got off, and started walking over around Bay Street here, getting rid of the money and changing the smaller bills, the 10s and things I had for other bills, spending the 20s, changing them to 10s.
How much did you get?
About $900. And I went to a building, let me see if I can pick it out from here, where there was a hooker that I knew and her Iranian boyfriend were sort of waiting there, and I think I bought 5 grams or something like that. See that big patch of green over there?
Mm-hmm.
That is Rosedale. Rosedale is surrounded by a huge ravine, so I got a bottle of water and I went and I stared out of my mind, sat and took my 5 grams of smack and sat there shooting up all day until it was time to go somewhere. That's that story. We're down here on Wellington Street, and one guy had sort of instigated this idea, oh man, we'll go pull a banknote robbery. And we had no dope left on the Monday morning and no possibilities. So I wrote some banknotes and some robbery notes saying that this is a robbery or whatever, and I need the money. And I came walking out here. I walked over and I got into the bank lineup about 15 minutes after the bank had opened. And I pulled my first robbery of 4. That's what I did the 3 years for.
You did 3 years for a robbery?
4 robberies.
4 robberies.
4 robberies.
Okay, let me see your shirt nice and quick.
Okay, and I am wearing this, and the camera doesn't lie, it's wrinkled, and I just pulled it out of a drawer. But this is one of my old shirts from Joyceville, the Joyceville Penitentiary Institution in Joyceville, Ontario. And I'm wearing it at the request of the director here for the full impact as I return in my prison garb to the site of my first robbery.
Very good.
That just would have been the door that I walked in at about 10:15. It's still, you see, it's an and it was an old-fashioned bank. They didn't have the instant tellers. That was one of the things that I know before about they had the cashiers down that wall with their backs to the window. And I robbed the girl who was the first one in the express line here. And I came out the door, I had about $900. And of course I was smart enough to walk like nothing was happening down the stairs. I got here, I don't know, I can't remember if I couldn't think where to go, but I think my first idea was to just run this way. That's right, my idea was to run this way, but hey, about here, I saw a cab on the other side of the street, and I said, "Hey, taxi." The guy pulled a U-turn, and I got in. We started driving. I told him to take me over to one of the hotels over there. I think that's what the...
Which you went to a hotel?
Oh, you know, the Sheraton. I think the Sheraton Center. So I said, drop me off at the Sheraton Center. By that time, he pulled the U and I got in about here. By that time, 4 or 5 people were out the door and they pulled the alarm and we were going back down the other way.
And I'll tell you a personal story about Toronto. I saw the Ramones here in September 1976, which means I saw them here before they had been to London, before they really became anything. This was the second place in the world anybody at all wanted to see them after their hometown. Probably the first place in the world that anybody actually wanted to see them, because I'm not sure that even at that time too many people in their hometown even wanted to see them. Which means from that point of view, and for someone of my age, my background, and the kind of life I've led, I got the word early, if you know what I mean. I got the word. I was given an opportunity to hear the word early, which of that particular movement, that particular thing, the punk rock thing of 1976. I got to hear the word early here in Toronto. And there's a lot of, I'm sure there's a lot of things that I don't even know about where that is, that would also be somebody's true story here. They got the word first here before they heard it in London, Los Angeles, or, Paris, whatever the old cliches are. But it's really funny. We always get the word before. We always get the information, the word, whatever, before a lot of other places in the world. But before we're ready to deal with it, and we're not really terribly confident. We're the kind of like people who you shouldn't tell about things first, because we won't trust you. And that's the psychology. Except the few, the few else. But generally, the city won't trust you. If you're the first one doing something, Toronto will not trust you, because they have to hear it from somewhere else first. They need a sort of a sense of approval. We don't have our urban stories. That's one thing that's really worried me, about our city and our, sort of inferior psychology and our need to be mainstream before we do anything else. There's kind of an obsession with success will actually reflect how good we are. Commercial success, money success. No, that's the important thing. Is that the funny thing is that he's actually out and sort of in the open, in an open area, in a club, the promoter.
Yeah.
Smoking crack. It was funny. To me, that's the important part of the story, because this is a guy who's pushing. This is a guy in Toronto who is like, you know what? That fucking guy, he tried to save the sign on the El Macombo. And you know why? Because he comes from a place where you actually have old buildings, and he's from Montreal. You actually have old buildings, and you do preserve the old sort of landmark stuff. Who's the one fucking guy who tried to save the sign at the El Macombo? A crackhead from Montreal, a rock and roll guy, Not, I was like, fucking tear it down and put in a bunch of yuppie media offices or some other goddamn thing. I don't even give a shit. That sign's a fucking landmark. Anyway, that's what I like Danvers. That's what I like about Danvers. He's authentic in a place where people would usually be fucking scared to be authentic. Get you outside. Might challenge your chances of getting a good job or something. Okay, let's move on.
What are some of the most memorable shows in town?
The most memorable shows were fucking 12 people at the Turning Point, truth to tell you. In terms of, like, what would you call it, notoriety?
Yeah.
We played with the Ramones.
Mm-hmm.
We played at the El Macombo with Richard Hell. What were the other bands?
You sold more, what was that thing you told me? You sold more alcohol than the Rolling Stones.
I believe so, yeah. We had the biggest night ever at the El Macombo.
For liquor.
One huge, well, yeah, I think, if I get the story straight, it was one really fucking huge night.
Tell me about your Ramones anecdote at the concert hall when you guys opened up for them.
Oh, no, I came face to face. They were isolated from us. I didn't meet any of them, except I ran into Joey Ramone,
who was...
So they were in the downstairs backstage,
Yeah,
you guys were upstairs next to the stage, right?
He said, I came rushing out the door at some point of the dressing room, and there was Joey Ramone. I nearly fucking knocked him over, and he said, "Holy fuck, man." You know, not a great anecdote.
That's it? That's all that happened?
That's all that happened, and holy fuck, man.
How did they sound that night?
They sounded great. The Ramones always sounded great. That was the thing about the Ramones. They were so drilled. I mean, the first time I saw them at the New Yorker Theater on Yankee, they're so well drilled. Yeah. I mean, the guy's bass cut out. In the last song, the bass was completely gone, and he's flailing. He's just trying to find out where the fuck the chord or something is gone. There's no bass happening. The other three, boom, plowed through the song like nothing was happening. Didn't even look.
Right.
Didn't even look over. Like, I mean, everybody knew their part, and they were tight fucking band.
Why wasn't Canadian culture, if there is such a culture to speak of, Canadian traditions, not good enough for you, not enough for you, not satisfying enough?
Well, I define my culture...
Why didn't they provide enough?
I don't know. I define my culture as North American. I'm spent my childhood till I was 11 in the States, and I came here, and so I don't really... And I live in the city, so I'm just consider that I've grown up in urban North America, because Toronto here is not Canada. It's Canada only in... It's got some Canadian aspects.
Well, what is Canadian to you? What's the center of Canada to you? What's the middle of the country? What's the heartland of Canada?
I don't know. I think there's a few different Canadas. I think Montreal and Quebec City really Montreal's a very Canadian city. Montreal is very the French language and the hockey really reminds you that you're in Canada. And
so maybe in terms of Toronto being
and the fact that it's surrounded by Indian reservations. I never figured economics. I can't figure out. I don't really give much of a shit about it. I guess I've never made any money. I've gone into the arts. It's a lousy thing to do for money. No, the availability of information and the choices you've got.
It's an advantage of...
It's an advantage. Just like I said, everything I've learned about Cuban music has been from CDs and videos, and I've met some really interesting people, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Even people who said, giving me their whole moment's wisdom. I've learned my music through, these, what was it we were calling them, capitalist technical innovations, videotapes and CDs. I've been really aware of that the whole time that I've been learning this music. I have a CD of the Sexteto Habanero from 1919. I know what this sounded like the time these guys sat in a room and played this, because I have it on CD. And that's how I get to know the music. So, I don't know, your question was about being toxic to artists.
Society being toxic to artists.
It doesn't like them much.
You're still a musician, right?
It doesn't like them much, sort of. Yeah, I'm a musician.
You're a musician.
Yeah, it doesn't like artists much.
Right.
It's sort of, I think there's a resentment to people. No, I don't know about that too, because it's like I said, it ties in with technical stuff too. Like technical things make, things obsolete. Records make records played loud enough makes the band obsolete. There's big problems right now with the internet thing.
Right.
We're talking about, I was sort of
copyright.
talking about that earlier. It's, you put out a CD, somebody can put it on the internet in 20 minutes because of the way the information is transmitted. And it's, if you have a...
What about the role of music? Talk to me about the role of music. I compare it to the role of music, maybe not specifically pop music in Cuba, but maybe folkloric music. And
well,
can we say that we have any folkloric music in North America?
Of course. It's just, the Cuban thing is so funny because it's just gotten to take the best of everything. The African thing is very evident because you have the conga drums and you got guys who get cowbells and you got
maybe the dad
hard rhythm.
Yeah.
So everything's very evident, but you know, to what extent that is enriched by the European conservatory experience is another thing as well, and
there's also a lot of
their folkloric thing is a because I think because they, you know, in a folkloric style, a true folkloric style, and you know, follows conventions. This is where rock and roll stopped being a traditional music, when, you know, you stop having language to talk about the other players in your ensemble. You stop, I think, at that point being serious.
But you're really into Cuban folklore. You're really into art, music like, well, rumba style drumming and music, and Abacua even, which is a cult, right?
Yeah.
And
I know some bata. I learned some bata from Pancho Quinto, and
and the religious aspect involved is pretty attractive to you as well, right? The Yoruban culture, maybe, or the Abacua.
I don't know about any culture. I'm not crazy about cultures, really.
You're a full-on culture buff.
I am, but I'm happy in a diverse culture. I think the idea of a diverse culture is really good, and you know,
here, let's get out of the rain.
I think the idea of a diverse culture is really good. Because it helps people keep focuses on things, you know. Like, you know, who's gonna go out and preserve an old Arsenio Rodriguez record? Some fucking white guy coming from the outside, or some black guy whose uncle told him that Arsenio Rodriguez was a no good so-and-so, and that it's just who you know, and it's on the street, you know, like
But you'd go to Cuba if you had the cash, right?
I'd take a trip for sure, yeah.
I mean, you love that culture. You love the island. You love the music.
I love the music, really. I've never been to the island, so I can't comment on it. I have an affinity. I know there's even something familiar even about the way that the people talk.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not, you know, gonna venture to guess what any spiritual connection beyond what I can tell is, you know.
Well, I'm saying maybe what I'm suggesting is just that there's something lacking for you up here in terms of our not having any rituals, our being so.
I'm more like this. I think I would be more dissatisfied on the level that we don't at all really encourage. We have everything in the wrong place. I think, you know, we don't have our feelings towards art in the right place in our kind of society. That's a sort of a sad thing. But then, you know, we have lots of other things out of kilter. In a really, really good world, everybody, you know, really not really good, in a really fair world, you know, where everything was equal and everything was the same, everybody'd be a great artist for 2 hours a day, and would do something else, you know, important. They'd also be a good economist for 2 hours a day, and they'd be a good construction worker for 2 hours a day, and then they'd sweep the floor and wash the dishes for 2 hours a day, and have a round, and they'd do something physical for 2 hours a day, do something mental for 2 hours a day, do something spiritual for 2 hours a day. But that's not the way we live, you know. We all live, you know, like 8 hours worth of banking, and you know, like, you know, who the fuck wants to pay a musician on the weekend? You know, when I can turn on my stereo, you know, or you know. But that's even that's an old one. That's old now. That idea that. Well, let's get some lights turned on for your video here. So, you know, it would be nice if we valued art more. I think it would be nice if we did have more of a value for art.
Mm-hmm.
You know, It's funny because I saw that a lot. I see that a lot in. I think, it's probably all sort of, I don't know. Somebody may accuse me of being like sort of weak-minded or something, but when I looked at people who were in drug treatment, for example, I think any one of them could have used, at least some instruction in some kind of art that would have been more useful to them than trying to convince them that just pumping gas or doing something really terrible was, all they should be thinking about, You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, yes.